Lockport Community Television. Stories from around Western New York that affect your life. This is Studio One with Joanna Toriano.
Welcome to Studio One. I'm your host, Joanna Toriano, and today I have a return guest, Destin Radder, who works out of, what's the?
Women's Medicine of Niagara.
Women's Medicine of Niagara of Lewiston. And he's an herbologist and an acupuncturist, correct? Okay. I was so interested in what you had to say that we never got around to the actual treatments, but let's back up a little bit and let's start right from some of the key things. Tell us a little bit about Chinese medicine.
Chinese medicine was developed, the estimates are anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. And Chinese medicine is really, it's kind of an umbrella term under which there's acupuncture and herbology and kind of a movements kind of similar to yoga, massage. And Chinese medicine really describes a philosophy, a really unique philosophy of that describes how the body works. And it's really a philosophy that looks at the body from a completely different point of view than what we're used to from a Western point of view. And I don't think it's any more right or any more wrong. It's it's my personal opinion that if we can get Western medicine and Eastern medicine together, looking at one problem with two different sets of eyes, you just come up with more solutions and when you have two people working at on a common problem, then often you find unique solutions that haven't been thought of before. But Chinese medicine really describes that philosophy, and then herbology and acupuncture and massage and dietary therapy are how you put that philosophy into motion and how you actually treat a problem. The philosophy is to identify what's going on, and then to resolve it is you use those various we say we have 5 branches of treatment, of major kinds of treatment.
Before you get into the treatment, have there been any studies done as far as Chinese people versus American people? Are they healthier than we are? Because if they're being treated one way and we're being treated another way.
Well, it's tough because modern China is a very different place.
Have they adapted our ways?
Yes, yeah. I mean, and as far as modern China today, Western medicine is a lot more prevalent. They do use, Chinese medicine and acupuncture is definitely used, and it's much more common than around here. But you can imagine in a country that's really looking toward modernization, just like many other parts of the world, the old ways are kind of falling by the wayside. And a lot of what Chinese medicine is about balance. It's about not working too hard, but not relaxing too much either. Not being too angry, but not being too sullen. It's all about a balance, and usually the modern world is about working a lot and working at a high speed and
so it's like opposing forces.
Yeah.
Working on you. I mean, there's what you should be doing and what you are doing. But that's like here too.
Yeah. And it was very interesting learning Chinese medicine because it took at least a good year of my 4 years of school to really kind of let go of a lot of my Western thinking. And I'm constantly in the treatment room, I'm constantly battling with the American idea of more is more. And the Eastern, the older Chinese idea of less is more. So they say a master acupuncturist needs but one needle. If you really understand what's going on in the body, whereas the novice needs many. So my Western brain says, well, we should just keep on putting lots of needles in because that has to be better, right? but I've actually, there's many times where I've, somebody has back problems, and I'll be putting in needles, and I'll just go 1 or 2 needles too far, and then they're like, oh, you know what, my elbow's starting to hurt. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me take about 2 or 3 needles out, and then they're like, oh, okay, there it goes. And I'm like, oh, well, I just went a little too far there, So it's really interesting. It is opposing views, and a lot of times you feel like those forms of thinking are kind of working against each other. But like so many other things I believe in, like if you can get a balance between those two, I really think that's the best option, or the best solutions come forth.
So if somebody was to come into your office, well, let me start back before I even ask you that. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that people come into your office for? I mean, you're associated with a women's clinic. Mm-hmm. Do you have patients that are men? Do you have children? Do you have, what's your clientele?
It really it really varies. I am in an OBGYN practice, mm-hmm. A women's health practice, but I treat all sorts of people and all sorts of ailments. It was really, I'm in that specific office mainly because of the forward-thinking doctors who own it, mm-hmm. Dr. Renee Boffman and Dr. Donna Feldman. Mm-hmm. They really, they see that Western medicines, the Western medicine that they practice is really, can be complemented by, different forms of medicine, and they in fact are, very forward-thinking in their ideas of nutrition and supplementation, and mm-hmm. as far as like vitamins go, and just bringing in someone like me shows that they're really open to looking at all options that are possible. Mm-hmm. They know, and they're trained in in Western medicine, and that's what's mainly used in that practice. But oftentimes they say, well, why don't you go across the hall and see what Destin has to say. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mainly do pain and women's health. Mm-hmm. So pain can be anything from low back pain is probably is probably what I treat the most. Mm-hmm. Low back pain, hip, knees, elbows, mm-hmm. Work-related pain, mm-hmm. injuries, car mm-hmm. accident, whiplash, neck problems.
So you have males and females in your practice?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned vitamins. I'm just curious from my own personal reasons. How do you feel about liquid vitamins versus the capsules versus the chewables versus mm-hmm. Like you go into the store and you see, like which yeah. one's the best one? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, when I started practicing, I have a very good friend of mine who's in California right now, who has years in the nutraceutical and vitamin world, and we started talking a lot, and I really kind of scoured the market for what I think is the best, and there's a few products out there that I think are unique because they create vitamins from a whole food source.
Okay. Yeah.
So in other words, it's not it's not vitamin C that's ascorbic acid that's created in a lab.
Okay.
And then put into a vitamin. It's as much as they extract it from some sort of whole food source. Mm-hmm. Then the original mixture that they start with is a whole food, is like a spirulina or some sort of food-based medium that they start with, and it's much less of a laboratory Frankenstein mm-hmm. kind of approach to vitamins, and more of an approach that looks at nutrition from the original nutrition source, which is
the food.
Yeah. So they get vitamin C from cherries, and they get vitamin A and vitamin from carrots, and
mm-hmm. What about the liquid versus the pills or the capsules, or how do you feel about that? I know what I've been told. I want to see if it jives with what you're going to tell me.
Yeah, it really depends. if you think of like liquids as in like tinctures, which is an extract of, you know, especially herbs and stuff like that, that is, I believe that the farther you get from just plopping, you know, leaves and sticks and twigs, herbs in water and boiling it, you know, and drinking that tea, that decoction, the farther you get away from that, the less effective it is, but it's also more convenient, you know, so there's, again, a balance, you know, it's, in school I would hand people a bag full of sticks and twigs and leaves and berries, and, you know, and it was extremely, extremely effective, but it also had sometimes complicated cooking directions. It tasted really wild. And it was incredibly effective, but compliance was very, you know, started really, you know, it didn't even start, it never started very high. It was, you know, there's some people who really enjoyed it and really liked the whole process and working with real, you know, natural products. And then there's other people that, you know, you just don't have, you know, when you have a family of, you know, 3 kids, you got 2 people working, you know, when do you have time to boil this tea? And then you like leave it on the stove too long and it burns down, you know. So you do have to balance that, and there's that, and there's tinctures that are more of like a concentrated liquid, often an alcohol extract. You know, then you kind of get into powders, which a lot of times are a decoction, a tea that's made, but then sprayed over some medium, like a potato starch or something like that. And then you have tablets and capsules. So liquid versus tablets, like vitamins, it kind of depends, because a lot of times, like for example, like vitamin D is often carried better in an oil, whereas other things, you know, can just be water soluble, you know, and just and carry well in a dried tablet form. So not everything can just be like packed into a capsule, you know, and maybe it says it on the label, but you know, the difference between it saying it on the label and actually your body benefiting greatly from it is there's a big difference there.
I was told that liquid was the way to go because it gets into your system quicker. And since I'm such a baby with pills, I mean, you tell me liquid, I'll do liquid, you know, so that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, that's also a balance, you know, like, are you good, like, okay, so maybe tablets might be better, but if it doesn't get in you, it doesn't help, you know? So, I mean, so liquids might be better. And you know, and I think, you know, liquids are closer to that original tea, you know, and how we, you know, a soup, you know, how we cook, you know, so, you know, for a lot of things it might be, you know, better and more effective and easier to digest because you don't have to break down. So of course, if you have a tablet, you have binders and, you know, you have substances that need to keep that, you know, tablet together, which they actually did make tablets in ancient times. You know, in herbology textbooks, a lot of, well, not a lot of, but many of the formulas actually have directions for making tablets. But a lot of, you know, where you encase things in honey or you dip things, you know, which is interesting because there was pills, so there's been pills for thousands of years. You know, they had boards with little holes drilled in them that they would pour into, and then they'd put another board on top of it with a, you know, with another kind of tablet thing, you know, and like let it dry and then pop, you know, and there you go, you know, so you had, so there's you know, they've always been thinking about how is it easier to get it in you, you know, because like I tell a lot of patients, the best herbs are the ones that get in you. If they sit on your, you know, on your table, or, you know, it could be the greatest things in the world, but if they don't get in you, then it doesn't really help you too much.
I'm going to go home and check my vitamin bottle and see what's really inside of it. Now that you're talking about it, it's like, I wonder if it's chemicals or if it's the real thing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big, I think is a
it's kind of important thing.